A pleasure to have, and actually because it's the panel of entrepreneurs, okay, innovators and edtech, you were supposed to start with Monica and we didn't. So we're starting disrupting since the minute one. And I'll explain you why. Actually, Monica is going to address us a little bit on where are we in the field of education, integrating AI, and how are we actually innovating within the field. And we will actually have encounter with 3 tech founders and CEO, ed tech founders, to follow up. And we wanted to actually have that as a conversation, and Monica offered to actually start talking in this format, and so like that we could engage directly in a lively conversation. So actually, to talk about Monica in a nutshell, Monica is now the director recently, actually a couple of weeks ago, of the ID Lab at Imperial College. Previous to that, she was head of immersive learning at Meta. She's been at Amazon before. She's considered one of the top 100 global women in emerging technologies. And well, it's a true privilege to have you here with us. So actually, Monica, highlight us a little bit. We highlight us a little bit about, or enlighten us about where are we going in the field of education on innovation and technologies.
Yay. Super excited to be here to talk about innovation and the future of education. No matter how old any of you are, you've seen an incredible amount of advancement in education in your own lifetime. For me, it went from encyclopedias all the way up to computers that are able to make analysis of complex systems and to make predictions. But unfortunately, most of these technologies up to this point have been largely passive. So they obediently do what we tell them to do. And that, unfortunately, has led to an education system that has mirrored that behavior, with rote memorization and standardized tests being the norm. I don't think any of us thought this was the best way to learn, but the problem is that we just didn't have the technology or the tools to make learning engaging at scale. If I asked you all to think back across your educational experiences, at some of those aha moments that you had, I bet you can remember the person, the place, or the experience that made you curious enough that you just remembered it when I asked you. The problem is that most of us only have a handful of those, which means that those are the exception and not the rule. But those were the true learning moments. And by not prioritizing those kinds of experiences, we ended up with an education system that was critically flawed. And so in order for us to figure out how we want to move through it, we decided to go through that process of one-directional flow of content. And if we had stuck to that, we would have ended up training our students to become more like robots. But now that the robots are here, we can actually turn our education into focusing on being more human. And that means leveraging humans for what humans are good at, like awareness and higher order thinking and solving solutions. And then we can complement all those skills with our machines and our technology to handle tasks that are too tedious or time-consuming or beyond our capabilities. I think what sets us apart from the machines is our ability to imagine and to feel curious, and even to feel frustration when things aren't working out in hopes of finding a better solution. But we as humans, although super intelligent, are very limited, right? And so we can only go so far, which is why I think it's actually this triangular partnership of humans and technology and machines that are going to allow us to solve problems that we have been unsuccessful at solving on our own to date. And so when you think about what this could unlock, sorry, slipping a little bit, I believe that we can use this technology to come up with solutions that we've been able to solve, like safer vehicles, or curing diseases, farming without pesticides, or even reversing the global climate crisis one day. The question is, if we can leverage this triad to also fix solutions in the education space. But first we have to figure out all the challenges that we have and all the technology that's next to us and figure out how to bring it together and where to start. AI, AR, VR, MR, all of those pieces have been living in disparate places for the last couple of years, each one showing us its superpowers and each one helping us understand what's possible in the future. But I don't actually think that the future of education lies in just one of the individual capabilities of these technologies. AI is immensely powerful at adaptive learning, continuous assessment and content creation, And XR allows us to learn with 3D objects and to learn in simulated environments. But it's actually the combination of all these that will finally unlock the ability for us to increase engagement and personalization at scale. Right now, these pieces are living all over the country, right? Or all over the world, really. We have these pieces that are helping us understand, what if we bring all these together? What if we were able to create a system that brought in, and we were just talking about this backstage, that brought in the ability for AI to create AI-generated avatars as assistants. And so they could act as personal assistants so that nobody ever had to learn alone anymore. Nobody had to stop learning because they got lost, and nobody has to stop asking questions when they're fueled by curiosity. AI can also make sure that it is understanding how you're learning across every single surface, not just your answers in the multiple choice tests. And it can analyze those patterns, and then it can deliver content that meets you where and when you need that. This is where we want to go. But of course, all of these pieces are scattered right now. They're being incubated in startups, they're being tested in pilots, which is why I believe that this particular moment belongs to higher education. It's one of the very few places that can actually act as the hub that brings together the technology, the research, all of the solutions that we're currently finding across all the different startups. And it can do it across every single industry. I don't know any other space that can do that right now in this moment. Of course, in order to make this successful, we're going to need a lot of new things, like a new nervous system for all these new inputs and outputs. We're going to need much better, faster ways to create content. And we're going to have to rethink assessment. And assessment's been really, really hard, right? It's like, how do I know if you actually have the skills enough to go forward and do your job well? Or how do I know if you got lost and you shut down 2 days ago? Or if you really liked that assignment and you went home and told your whole family about it? And the reason is we just haven't had the tools to do well at scale. And so we had to prioritize standardized tests from the time you start school to the time we do our corporate training year after year after year. But now we have a whole new set of tools. We can actually assess people's performance based on their conversation and natural language and their text messages through AI. But we can also, through XR, understand people's body language or track all of what they're doing with their hands and even their eye movement. And it's not going to be long before we can use EEG data to go directly to people's brains. I know that sounds terrifying, but electroencephalography, still new area of study. It sounds scary, but you just put sensors on headphones or anything else on your head. What it can track could be extremely compelling for education moving forward, because it can track things like your cognitive load, or your focus, your retention, your learning style, and your emotional state. But most importantly, and this is where the interest is first starting, is it can actually detect ADHD and dyslexia long before our current tests, so we can start to get students the help that they really need. There's no doubt that right now our entire industry is in its own aha moment. We're looking at all these pieces and we're thinking, can we actually start to bring them together to make this different? At the very least, I hope that we start to use these technologies in our teaching so that the students become fluent with them and they use them as part of the tool belt in the future of their work. And by prioritizing this more adaptive form of learning and personalization will actually help them get the skills, the soft skills that they need, and that awareness and that adaptability as the job market continues to change. Because there will undeniably be job loss, right? In the next, 10 years, we're set to see 25 million jobs possibly go away. We've faced job extinction before, and we have come out stronger for it. But I think it's really important for us to recognize that with every new technology, we lose jobs, and of course, we create new industries. And so in order to help prepare, we have to first adapt our education. And this new form of education won't just live in schools or in workplaces anymore, but it will be seamlessly integrated with our daily lives, cultivating this way of continuous learning, our lifelong passions, unlocking that curiosity, and hopefully the pursuit of innovation. But in order for us to do that, we have to first come together, recognize that technology is just a tool, right? And its impact, whether positive or negative, well, that depends entirely on how we decide we want to use it. And so conversations like this and the experts up on the stage mean that we get to come together and collaborate on architecting a future through wisdom and empathy and that commitment to responsibility. Because the future doesn't just happen, we get to create it. And we're in a massive moment right now to try to figure out what that looks like. So I'm thrilled to be here with all of you, and of course these experts up on stage, to talk about how we get from vision to where we are right now and make sure that we are building those first few steps of this architecture in a way that will last for generations to come.
Well, thank you, Monica. I think that was great to start, and I'm thrilled to have actually three not only leaders of EdTech, but also founders of the theme, and see how they've been implementing that innovation. We know that startups are the forefront of innovation in many of our industries. We discussed at the moment and previous to this panel that for a long time it was thought that actually the innovation was in academia. Then it was thought of that in the laboratories of industry innovation was happening. But for many years now, we see that actually innovation in many sectors happen at the startup level and then gets integrated, then absorbed, and push the boundaries forwards of innovation within companies or even within sectors. So it's great for me to have three of the representatives. Alvaro Moya, who's actually CTO and founder of LeaderCore, a platform of courses that give a lot of skills to senior engineers into getting on step forwards and leaderships, also helping developers to understand better AI. We'll talk about that later. Ramiro Sandrino, who's actually a founder and CEO of Ukademy, a platform for a selectivity process to access different I would say jobs and future of work, but also connecting and assessing on the university track for students. And Ricard Rusquet, who's a founder of Robotics, who's actually offer solutions for robotic education, connected highly with the Lego education model that many of us knows. But I also want to say about Ricard that he was previously also Innovation Director of the City of Barcelona. So he's been a long time into the innovation ecosystem, and I'm sure that we can learn from you. So actually, I wanted to start asking the three of you. Monica has mentioned in her speech about the important words, about the importance of connecting technological solutions to global challenges. No? And she mentioned many global challenges that the world is facing. But if we take, SDG 4 and we talk about education and education quality, how is each of your startups actually bringing technological solution to actually the future of education? So whoever wants to start, I'm happy.
Okay, everyone. Yeah, I fully agree with what has been said at the beginning of this day-to-day and what Monica said. We need to put the user or the student, not anymore a student, at the center. So one of the global challenges that I'm talking about schools, primary and secondary schools, we have a lot of challenges which are real, which is demotivation, which is respecting the speed learning for all the students, respect different capacities for learning and different systems for learning. Not everyone, we know now that not everyone learns the same way. So I think these technologies need to focus on these specific problems and need to solve real day-to-day problems that we can solve now. And there's a lot of, and not forgetting that in this transition in between technology and the participant, I don't call it students anymore, we have the teachers. So they are a necessary step that we need to take into account. We cannot breach that easily. And so what's the role? And so probably helping those teachers in addressing these real world problems. I like to walk on the schools and the classrooms, so we see these real challenges, and we need to use those technologies. To me, that's a global challenge, but you need to be focused on this speed of learning, learning capacities, learning systems. So I think never forget to put the participant in the center.
Like another role that you can use here, and is in this case what we are using, and I think especially in higher education when you are treating with adults, is what is going to work better from this point on, which is the role of the mentor more than a teacher. Right? It's like more like a facilitator for debate, for sparkling questions and creativity and solving problems together that they are going to face in the real world, because the content is there. And now with just one piece of content that can be written or can be spoken or can be whatever, however the mentor or the teacher feels more confidently recording it, but you are going to be able to seamlessly put that content in all the other formats, in all the other languages in the world, with or without avatar, no matter, but you have this content ready for them to discover, to learn at their own pace, with personalized paths, depending on the person. What should you reinforce first in terms of your skills and weaknesses? And then the space with a mentor, with a teacher, it's more about discussing and trying to bring real-world cases, real-world scenarios to stage. That's my vision of how the role of the teacher in education should evolve. And then my question for all of you is, like, in that sense, if the mentor is more like a facilitator, like an agile coach in organizations, AI and XR or all the other disruptive technologies are going to help, and we are going to be kind of AI or tech-powered teachers, or are going to fully replace us? I think that's one of the questions and fears that we are discussing in this Enlightened, I would say.
Ramiro,
in my opinion, answering your question, I think that we are going to combine all of that things, and teachers are going to have a lot of more data about how the student is learning or how he's interacting with the platforms. And also the technology, I think that is going to put the student in the center and adapt to the rhythm of the student. For example, in our students, a lot of them are working while they are studying, so we adapt the rhythm. If they want to study at night or whatever they want, all of that process, the technology can adapt to that student.
That's great. So we talk about adaptation, we talk about the professor as a mentor, we talk about actually not about participants, about users, but not about students anymore. We're already starting to disrupt quite the model, so it's quite interesting where we are going. I wanted to ask specifically, because we are thinking here at Enlightened this year about the future of education in the age of AI. I wanted to ask you three, and probably also Monica, after on a larger scale, especially on the higher education arena that you are really familiar with, how much in this year generative AI or AI as per se has transformed the way that you're performing in your companies, not only on the future, and I know, for example, Ramiro, that you just received, and congratulations for that 1.5 million investment this summer, about actually personalizing even more your model using AI, etc. So I know that actually even your investors and everything are pushing that forward. But I mean, how are you using it for the educational purpose? And how much do you see AI as a disruptor in your role as entrepreneurs? Like recently, and I was mentioning to them before, we had Sam Altman from OpenAI at IE visiting us, and one of the things that he mentioned was actually that he was the CEO of OpenAI, and ChatGPT was his CTO. So how much are we really, as entrepreneurs, and when we think about that enhancement of productivity that generative AI can bring, how much do you see also your future as an entrepreneur bridging that to AI? But first, maybe how AI has disrupted your models in this year, and how you envision actually AI to help you to push things forward, whoever wants.
I can give you an example. So we have a platform that teaches 25,000 students every day. And when we started only 3 years ago, we started to teach basically coding. So the kids learned how to code a robot to do things, right? To solve problems. But now, AI codes for you. You just say what you want. So it disrupted the model that we created only 3 years ago. We deployed the content, and I said, do we need to teach the kids on coding?
On prompting. No?
On prompting? Our approach is different. We are moving now into creativity on how to solve that problem creatively, more than coding. So there's less content on coding and more on creative thinking, because that's what we understand that kids will need more, and when they go, I don't know if they go to work or whatever they're going to do after, probably it's just the skill that AI will take longer to, but it already disrupted our system.
Ramiro, you're implementing that new
Yeah,
investment. How are you transforming your model?
We are using in many ways. For students, we are using for the first contact resolution with the students. When a student have a doubt in our platform, the first option is to have an AI tutor, and if the doubt is not resolved, then a human is entering to see what's happening and to answer that question. Also, as the student is interacting with the platform, the AI is learning how it's learning, so it personalizes the path of the student and recommend which lessons are better to student first than the others. But also we use in the team, and for doing the test or assessments, we put all of our content, and the AI recommend us what we should ask for the students and how to make that test better.
Yeah, same here. Personalized path according to the content. This AI mentor that is not only asking questions, but is also referencing to the exact point on your content through the 80 hours of content, hundreds of videos, where in the index is the exact video at which point in time where that content is giving you the answer, on top of giving you a ChatGPT style answer that is summarizing that the answer to that question, right? So I think the way we are going to organize the information mentally and the energy we use to create this kind of syllabus in education, but in every other area of our life, how we order and structure the information, the architecture of information, is not going to be relevant anymore. The way you write that information is not going to be relevant anymore, because you are going to be able to ask in general language, in natural language, and it's going to give you an answer, period. You don't need to memorize how you were organizing your knowledge base of your company anymore. You just drop the content and...
But actually, I'll be a bit more provocative with you, Alvaro, because you mentioned to me something before, and it comes into what Ricardo was mentioning before about disruption that he had on teaching how to code or on coding. You mentioned to me before that actually you are now advising developers on what AI can do for them. So actually, are developers a dead profession or not?
No. Short answer
Good
is
answer.
not. Long answer is at least not in the medium term. And maybe a longer answer is like, I don't know how much AI can evolve in 5 years from now to give you an answer. So I will not give you an answer more than 5 years from now. But right now, with all the developers I know, it's still on the early days, and it's still throwing bugs into the code. And the important work is the creative work. So it's not about how to solve a routine work, like in terms of technology, building an API, connecting the interface with your data. This is happening every day in teams of 50 people, and everyone is doing that 2-3 times per month. The same thing. This can be automated with this kind of GitHub Copilot or ChatGPT are tools that are helping that. But it's about how to use that tools so you can code better. And it's also that the development life cycle is much more than just coding. It's about testing the code. It's about bringing the information to the developer to understand what the code needs to do with that feature. And there, you can use these kind of tools as well. So it's about how to use the tools in the different stages of the development to help the people free up some time to be more creative and to raise more like a strategic vision. And this is what I try to teach the new developers that are coming to this world where there is always demand of more people. But it's not like, okay, learn to code in Python or in Java or in JavaScript or whatever. It's about how you are going to use your AI buddy, because it's going to be a 24/7 buddy that is there, is not going to be tired and knows as much as you and much more about coding. To have a junior that from the very beginning is creating world-class code and teaching him how to spot the bugs, how to spot the things that are not clearly done, and thinking in terms of product, not in terms of I am just part of the machine coding and coding and coding. That's my vision.
Actually, Monica, I wanted to go on that because it's really interesting. And actually, last year at Enlighted, we had to moderate a panel on metaverse. And metaverse was everywhere, no? And we were actually, you and I, talking about the preparation of that panel. Unfortunately, at the end, you didn't arrive, and we're so happy to have you this year. And actually, where is the metaverse today? So, you know, I think we're living also in the world of hypes, no? In the world of buzzword around technology and everything, and all things happening. And I know that it's not a buzzword. And I know from our learning innovation department at IE, and see Martin looking at me, that's not a buzzword. But I mean, how much like we're going on cycles, and how much are we adopting an education that pace? And actually, we go so fast. And we're probably kind of a dinosaur sector, the sector of education in terms of innovation, with things that actually the models of universities or models of different education systems have not evolved for, 100 years. So how do we adjust that, the sense of a hype, the sense of the boom, the sense of everything is happening, with actually how we can integrate that in education? And I think what you're just starting at Imperial College with that ID lab has much to do with that, and if you can tell us a little bit more, what are the projects that you have in hand there?
You're absolutely right. University used to go where you went to get the latest and greatest technology, right? It's the only place you could try the new really cool computers. Nobody had them at home. And then Apple did a beautiful job at getting them into people's homes, and then everything shifted, and now that return on investment is hard for a lot of people to understand. The hype cycle, it's been repeating and repeating and repeating. What it does well is it gets us to all understand the same vocabulary and the possibilities of what's out there. Most of it's promised before it's actually here. And then when the hype kind of dies down is when you actually start to build the real solutions, right? And so we're seeing this over and over again and again. As is evident up here, it's all the little pieces that we now need to start to bring together to build these true solutions. And so education is about 100 years behind now, unfortunately. One moment that we did have, though, was sort of that platform-based learning, accelerated in part by the pandemic, because we suddenly had to do this global experiment, bring all learning online, and a crisis is the best way to innovate. And we saw that happen there. It wasn't the best learning, but we increased access in a way that we never had before. But now we have to go to that next step. We're realizing we quickly gave people, information, but it wasn't engaging. No one was retaining information. People just sort of wanted the slip to say they did it. And so talking through all these different examples, right now that online learning requires people to go in and record videos, a lot of videos. And I was an educator for 10 years. You usually want to change your lesson every time you give it. You have new information, new students in the room. But to adapt those pre-recorded lessons is very hard. You have to go into the green room, you have to book the room, you have to edit it. So can we offer them the option to just have a digital twin made? And the AI is the script that they would normally read anyway in those teleprompters. But now if you have to change the script, you just change that. And its AI avatar can deliver that lesson with the adaptions as they evolve. You can also pause it in the way that you guys are talking about having those assistants. And if you have a question about something, you can get your question answered even if you're studying at 3 in the morning when you otherwise wouldn't have help. Or again, those learning pathways, AI detects that you're doing really well in one area, or that your learning style is much more visual. And it will eventually start to adapt and pull from all the different modules and deliver that content in a way that right now, our one-directional flow of information is having a very hard time doing. And so as we kind of evolve through that like passive consumption into more of a personalized interactive experience, it's going to take every single piece that you guys just talked about. And beyond that, think about the opportunities once we can get all of our AI agents to talk to each other, right? Because we've all been in classrooms where the conversations are fantastic and they're forward-moving and there's healthy debate and questions are being asked that make you think. And we've been in the opposite, where you often feel like everyone's half asleep and you don't really move forward, especially on Zoom. But if we can create AI agents that maybe there are assistants, maybe there's something else that help with that conversation, help move things forward, help ask rhetorical questions, and get people to engage in healthy listening habits and kind of the way that we engage through conversation, then we can ensure that those environments are also going in the right direction. So we went from sort of passive consumption to now our technology's noticing us, right? But like a lot of things notice us. My watch notices how many steps I've taken. It notices my heart rate, but it doesn't do much with it. The step we really need to get to now is, after noticing, how does it then adapt those environments for us to make sure that we're really in a space that we're learning the best that we can? So that's, again, the challenge is everyone now has online learning, and we recognize there are many, many, many pitfalls. How do we use this technology in a way that has to bring together the technology companies, the development partners, the academic institutions for research, to make sure that we're doing it? And I think education's been 100 years behind because we actually haven't had the tools that make sense. If you look at the ed tech landscape right now, it's very, very saturated. It looks like my data sets from chaos theory class and math class. And I think we're all trying, we all know that this is going to work and the little pieces are good, but I believe that when the technology matures to the place where the hype cycles have ended and we're actually able to build the solutions, it will be simple and it will be clear and it will make sense. And I think that's when we start to really move forward.
That's great. And actually, you bring me actually my little 2 minutes of pitch actually here about Enlighted, about Enlighted. And I'll tell you why. Because this afternoon, don't miss at actually, I think it's at 5:45, the conversation here between Iqlaq Shidoo and Edo Segal. Edo Segal in TouchCast has been actually creating a huge platform uniting the metaverse, the international artificial intelligence, and actually those digital twin that, and I've experienced myself seeing him digital twinning Iqlaq Shidoo, who's the dean, to give actually the part of his classes that he already prepared and everything. So this afternoon, you're going to see that in experience. So thanks a lot for putting that, because it's great. And also want to mention that every a network that you want to do with our founders and EdTech also will be organized at 3:30 on the 4th floor, and that whoever wants to network with them is also happy. So I just wanted to that, and so that was my elevator pitch moment for that. But actually, going back to our conversation, I wanted to touch something that when we talk about innovation and education, and I can relate a little bit to what our experience is at the IE School of Science and Technology. The model that we are trying to work in is a new model of convergence, and I think that convergence is at the moment in education. And probably you were saying that we didn't have the good technology, we didn't have the good tools, but also we are lacking that convergence. And when I was starting saying that the innovation was happening for a long time in academia, then in industry, then in the startup world now, it's actually probably a moment also to make converge and to try to bring together to tackle those solutions that are needed in the field of education, all the industry, all the academics, and all the entrepreneurs together, and to reflect on actually the question of what if we were addressing this challenge together, we would do different. I don't know what you guys are thinking about that.
That's why I bounce back between tech and academia and development. We have to build the bridge from each foundation and then meet in the middle. And I think we're getting closer and closer. But the opportunity is to solve four of the biggest challenges right now, which is engagement, retention, personalized learning, and skills-based assessment. And when we build all those bridges together, I think we'll be able to unlock those.
And how do you see that from the tech sector? Like, how much do you see that conversation open, that we call it controlled collision about whatever you friction together with the education world, with the industry? Are you seeing that? Are you palping that in the essence? Are you seeing that it's happening? Or actually are we still doing all our chats, each one of us on our side now? How do you want to?
think we are moving in that direction, but I don't think the conversation is still on, because there's a fundamental question to be addressed, which is, what do we need to teach, or what do they need to learn, or what do we need to learn, right? So that's so. In one hand, we have this technology push, these opportunities in terms of technology and offering, and then we have the user, the participant. So, but this is radically transforming what they need to know, or what do we need to know. So I think the conversation needs to go a little bit on that direction first. So how do we want to use the technology, and why? What is the purpose of all these tools? What do the kids needs to, or the kids or the adults needs to learn in order to survive in this world? Because this is, everybody said that, and it's reality. This is going really fast. So nobody's going to be able to catch up with that. So we have to acknowledge that. So if we look at 5 years from now, I don't have an answer. What do we need? And maybe the conversation needs to go on first, instead of how do we converge, what do we want our participants to know in order to survive in this world that is coming. And this is really striking me a lot, because I don't have an answer, and I invite everyone, if you have an opinion, or our mates, because this is really a key thing, I think.
Probably more human. Their answers are all in their pocket already. They don't need to memorize, right? They don't need to know half of what we currently teach them in the education space, and they know that. And so that's why in the United States we have a large problem with what is the return on investment in university anymore? Do they need to go and go through those courses in the same way, or do they want to come out with skills on how to negotiate, how to have empathy, things that make us more human, that will help? Again, we have to converge working with the machines and the technology, and the one thing that we need is that human, creative, innovative element to it. But all that to be figured out.
Even the institutions that are doing the teaching or the learning, right? We have those examples here in the table, right?
Yep.
But do we need universities anymore? Or maybe Fundación Telefónica we can learn from them, as we are doing now.
Yeah.
Is that in a different format, but we are learning, right? So the players will also be disrupted. The schools, universities.
Well, from our side, I can tell you what we need is different universities, probably. Different universities, transformed universities, but it's true, it's challenging, and actually the adaptation that we're going to see is going to be really, but I wanted to see, like, we have young people there, and I see you, Gea. Yes, we don't forget about you because you're in the back. I just wanted to ask you, can you raise your hand? Do you feel that education is changing? Do you feel that technology is helping you grow? Anyone? If everyone is feeling that way, raise your hand. If you're not, we still have a lot to do. It looks like we still have a lot to do. So
very
that's
good
great
data.
land for, great land for innovation, and great land for you guys to focus too. So that's great. Well, I wanted to maybe tackle on this last part of the panel that fourth thing. Look, we're talking about or we are reinventing the way each of you in your different platforms are trying to touch on different parts. I can think that, Ricard, you kind of mentioned at the beginning that connection with the engagement, or we make it more practical, or we push forwards and everything, no? You, with the numbers of people that you reach in the platform every day, and you kind of actually help them to have a more practical way to I would say, or you say engage, or, I would say in Spanish even engancharse, no? Like connect with the work that they're going to do in the future and everything in your platform, or you push that, Alvaro, forward in making those engineers that we go from kind of a technical background into a leadership background. And you mentioned to me before the importance that you were seeing, that probably the chief technology officer of today are probably going to be more and more the CEOs of the future, or the leaders of companies in the future, because of all that understanding. So looking into, I know you don't want to think more than 5 years ago, more than 5 years time ahead, but you know, I feel challenged because as we're celebrating our next 50, for example, at our university, to kind of ask you, okay, where are we going in 50 years? Who do you see education to be at that moment? I know it's challenging, but
Yep.
at least if we share a little bit of vision, we maybe find some answer for the young people that we just asked.
For me, there is just one factor that is driving businesses right now, which is speed. And we saw with AI, so the adoption was so massive in just 1 year that never happened before.
Yeah.
That's the difference between AI and metaverse, because the adoption was not there, were not real business use cases, right? It didn't happen with blockchain as well, and I have never seen that. The pace of adoption, the number of tools that are coming every single day that is outperforming what happened yesterday, haven't happened before. So it's new for everyone. Both visionaries or not, this new reality is new for everyone, but it's about speed, it's about productivity, and I think in 50 years from now, it's not about continuous learning. It's not that you have higher education, you have a master's or a degree, and that's it. It's about learning every single day.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's how to use the technology, which are tools, at the end are tools, to make a better work. And it's like when we had glasses in order to see better, it's a tool, right? And technology, in this case AI, right now it's a productivity tool. I don't know if we will reach general artificial intelligence, but it will be a tool as well. So it's about learning every single day and keep curious, because otherwise you will be obsolete, not in years, like now a truck driver or a taxi driver. You will be obsolete next summer if you stop. So I don't know how we are going to address the pressure, the anxiety of being obsolete every single day, but we will have here someone telling you every single day you are getting obsolete, because today you just worked, you just answered emails or whatever it will be the way of communicating in 50 years. But if you are not learning every day, maybe you are getting behind. So I see that.
To add to that, what's interesting too is our evolution of technology, right? So it's like right now, we went from no technology to everyone has 1,000 little rectangles, right? Like historically, humans sat around the campfire, shared information, shared meals. That's how we learned and talked to each other. Then we have this technology revolution where everything's in a phone. That's how we communicate with each other. That's how we learn. But it's not a natural way to engage or to learn. And so the idea of, can we seamlessly integrate with our daily lives through technology where it's almost invisible? And AI is helping us get to this point where eventually we're not going to have to wear big headsets for metaverse stuff. We're not going to have to constantly look at our phones. It'll be a very seamless, intuitive system that we're engaging with as we move forward. And so I think that vision of kind of moving to that seamless place, and learning will absolutely be on a continuum. We've already gotten there, but it will be delivered when and where you need it, because the system has been able to better understand where you're headed with it. But
Yeah.
Ricardo, Ramiro, some thoughts?
Yeah, our vision is, it reinforces your opinions, but the way we see it is maybe not that much talking about education, but talking about learning. So content will be open for everyone. So probably we need to help people to follow their inspiration and knowing what to choose, what pieces of learning they need to acquire in the immense wall of knowledge that will be available. So what do I need in order to fulfill my aspirations, my career, my growth as an individual? So develop that skill on what should I learn from this wall of content in order to succeed in my life as a person and as a professional. So that's one of the skills that I think, because the opportunities in learning will be huge, almost free and already available, as we are seeing now. So what do I need to learn? So how do we help people on taking? And I believe a lot on the self-inspiration. And we know that by kids, they know, we have scientific proof that kids intuitively know what they need to learn. So I would put that final note on believing back on the on the person, right? On what do they need to feel that they need to learn.
Wonderful. Ramiro, anything to
Yeah.
add?
No, for me it's the same. It's about learn how to use that technology. I think that everything that it's getting massive use for the people is when it's easy to use. So we have to discover how to have it in our days and use it to substitute the other thing we are doing right now. So we have to discover how to use it easily.
That's great. Actually, I'm going to tell you because that was a tricky question.
Yeah.
A month ago, we asked the same question to John Maeda, Vice President of AI and Design at Microsoft. And actually, his answer was, in 50 years from now, humans will be humans. And I think that's really an interesting thing to wrap up on this panel, because I think that we talked about curiosity, we talked about creativity and the importance that AI was bringing actually more time for creativity and maybe less time for technical issues. We've discussed also the conversions needed in the sector, but also the conversions. I'm really happy actually that you brought that up, Monica, about that convergence of the different tools. Like maybe last year we didn't know really what the metaverse was when I was starting with that before, or even now we could think about what AI is going to bring us or not, or XR, or different tools, but actually the combination of them and what it can bring to education of future is really also a moment of hope. And so that's a great momentum. I just want to thank you all for this panel. I hope that we actually didn't shake too much, but that we can actually grow and build all together on that future of education. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.